The sweet smell of cinnamon and roasted turkey should have filled me with holiday warmth, but instead my hands trembled as I stirred the gravy. I'd been cooking for 3 days straight, preparing what was supposed to be our family's perfect Thanksgiving dinner. At 58, I thought I'd finally found my place in this family again after Mom's stroke last year left her needing more help than ever. My sister Delilah had been so grateful when I moved back to help care for Mom, or so I believed. I was reaching for the salt when I heard voices drifting from the living room. Mom's raspy laugh, followed by Delilah's hushed tone. Something about the way they were whispering made me freeze. I set down the wooden spoon and moved closer to the kitchen doorway, my heart already starting to race with an inexplicable dread. "She'll pay the $63,000, Delilah whispered, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. Then we cut her out completely. My breath caught in my throat. $63,000. That was the exact amount I'd been discussing with the contractor for Mom's new roof, the one I'd volunteered to pay for because Mom's fixed income couldn't handle such a massive expense. Mom's cackle made my blood run cold. Right after she covers the new roof, too. Poor Marlena, always so eager to help. The mockery in her voice was unmistakable. She has no idea what's coming. I pressed my back against the wall, my legs suddenly weak. The kitchen felt like it was spinning around me. For the past year, I'd drained my retirement savings helping with Mom's medical bills, household repairs, and daily expenses. I'd convinced myself it was temporary, that once Mom was better, we'd work out a fair arrangement. I'd even been looking forward to the holidays, thinking we were finally becoming a real family again. But they were planning to take everything and then discard me like garbage. I closed the kitchen door as quietly as possible and smiled. I finished serving dinner like nothing had happened, watching them laugh and compliment my cooking while my mind raced with possibilities. Delilah kept patting my hand, telling me how wonderful it was to have me back home, how much Mom appreciated everything I was doing. The hypocrisy made my stomach churn, but I kept smiling and nodding. That night, I called my neighbor back in Phoenix, Constance, the only person who'd warned me about moving back home. "Connie, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "What's wrong, honey? You sound different." I told her everything I'd overheard, and the silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, she sighed. "Oh, Marlena, I was hoping I was wrong about them." "What do you mean? Remember when your mom had that mini-stroke 3 years ago? Delilah called me looking for you, but she also asked a lot of questions about your finances, how much your house was worth, whether you had retirement savings, if you were dating anyone with money." Connie's voice was gentle but firm. I thought it was odd then, but I figured she was just worried about family security. My hands were shaking again. "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? You were so desperate to reconnect with them after your dad died." She was right, and we both knew it. "What are you going to do?" I stared out at the dark street, at the house I'd been calling home again. "I'm going to give them exactly what they're asking for." The next morning, I drove to 3 different places: my bank, a lawyer's office, and a private investigator who specialized in financial fraud. By afternoon, I had a clear picture of just how deep this went. Mom's bank statements, which I'd been helping manage, showed several large transfers I'd never authorized. Money I'd given her for medical expenses had been moved to accounts I'd never seen. The private investigator, Marcus, was a soft-spoken man in his 60s who reminded me of my late father. When he spread the documents across his desk, I felt my world tilt sideways. "Mrs. Thornfield, this goes back almost 2 years, long before your mother's stroke." The papers showed a pattern that made me sick. Every time I'd sent money for Mom's medical bills, physical therapy, or household emergencies, portions had been systematically diverted. Not just pocket change either. We were talking about $28,000 over 18 months. Money that should have gone to keeping Mom comfortable had instead funded Delilah's new car, a vacation to Costa Rica, and what appeared to be gambling debts. "There's more," Marcus said quietly. "Your sister has been using your mother's Social Security number to open credit cards. 3 of them, with a combined debt of $41,000. I stared at the credit reports until the numbers blurred. "So when they take my $63,000 for the roof, they'll have stolen over $130,000 from you in total, and your mother will still be drowning in debt that Delilah created." He leaned forward. "Mrs. Thornfield, this isn't just family drama. This is criminal fraud." That evening, I sat in my childhood bedroom, the same room where I dreamed of having a real family again, and called Constance. "Connie, I need you to do something for me, and it's going to sound crazy. After what you told me yesterday, honey, nothing sounds crazy anymore." I explained my plan, and for the first time in days, I felt something other than rage. I felt powerful. "I need you to call me tomorrow at exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Can you do that?" "Of course, but Marlena, are you sure about this? Once you do this, there's no going back." I looked around the room at all my belongings I'd moved here, thinking I was coming home. The photo of Dad on the nightstand, the quilt Mom had supposedly made for me, but never actually finished. The books I'd brought to read to her during her recovery. All of it felt like props in someone else's play now. "They already made sure there's no going back," I said. "Tomorrow, I'm going to give them their gift." The next afternoon, I was sitting in the living room with Mom and Delilah, pretending to review contractor estimates for the roof. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it, but I kept my voice steady as we discussed payment schedules. Delilah had her laptop open, supposedly helping coordinate the work, but I caught her glancing at her phone every few minutes like she was expecting something. At exactly 2 o'clock, my phone rang. Constance's name appeared on the screen, and I answered with a smile. "Oh, hi there. Yes, I can talk for a minute." Delilah and Mom looked up with mild curiosity as I moved to the window, speaking just loud enough for them to hear. "What? Are you serious? The house sold already?" I paused, letting Constance play her part perfectly. $650,000? But we only listed it 3 days ago. I watched their faces change in my peripheral vision. Mom's eyes widened, and Delilah's fingers froze over her keyboard. No, that's wonderful news. I just wasn't expecting it to happen so fast." I laughed, a sound that felt foreign after everything I'd discovered. "Yes, after taxes and the realtor fees, I should clear about $480,000, more than enough for a fresh start." The silence in the room was deafening when I hung up. I turned back to them with the biggest smile I could manage. "Well, that changes everything, doesn't it?" Delilah recovered first, though her voice sounded strained. "Your house sold? In Phoenix?" 3 days ago, I put it on the market. Apparently, there was a bidding war." I sat back down, watching their faces carefully. "I was going to tell you both, but I wanted to surprise you. See, I've been thinking about what comes next, after we get Mom's roof fixed and everything's settled." Mom leaned forward, and I could practically see the dollar signs in her eyes. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Such a blessing." "It really is," I agreed, "especially since I found out about some financial irregularities in the accounts I've been managing." I pulled out a manila folder from my purse. "I think we need to have a serious conversation about money." The color drained from Delilah's face so fast I thought she might faint. "What kind of irregularities?" I opened the folder and spread Marcus's documents across the coffee table like I was dealing cards. Bank statements, credit reports, transfer records. The kind that involve $28,000 in unauthorized withdrawals and $41,000 in fraudulent credit card debt. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire ready to snap. Delilah's hands were shaking as she stared at the documents, and Mom had gone completely pale. I'd never seen either of them look so small, so caught. Now, before you start making excuses, I said, my voice calm and measured, I want you to know that I've already spoken with a lawyer and filed a police report. Elder financial abuse is a felony in this state. Mom's voice came out as a croak. Marlena, sweetheart, I think there's been some kind of mistake. The mistake was mine, I interrupted, gathering the papers back into neat stacks. I trusted family. I believed that when you needed help, it was genuine. I never imagined my own mother would let her daughter steal from me to pay for vacations and gambling debts. Delilah finally found her voice, though it sounded nothing like the confident woman who'd been whispering about cutting me out just days before. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. Mom's medical bills, my divorce, the kids. Your kids? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Delilah, you haven't seen your kids in 2 years because you chose drugs and casinos over them. Don't you dare use them as an excuse now. I stood up and walked to the mantelpiece, where family photos sat collecting dust. Pictures of holidays, birthdays, graduations, all the moments I'd missed while building my life in Phoenix. You know what the really sad part is? I actually thought we were rebuilding something here. I thought after Dad died, we were finally going to be a real family. Mom started crying then, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of panic, the kind you shed when you realize you've been caught and there's no way out. What are you going to do? I turned back to face them, and for the first time in years, I felt completely in control. Well, here's the thing about that house sale. It was real, but not quite the way Constance described it. I smiled, watching their confusion grow. I did put the house on the market and I did get an offer, but I haven't accepted it yet. Delilah leaned forward desperately. What do you mean? I mean that whether or not I sell depends entirely on what happens in the next few minutes. I sat back down, crossing my legs. See, I've prepared 2 different paths forward. In the first path, you both make this right. Delilah pays back every penny she stole, the credit cards get closed, and you both sign documents admitting to the fraud. The hope in their eyes was almost pathetic. And the second path? The second path involves me keeping the house, moving back to Phoenix, and letting the police handle this entire mess while you both figure out how to explain elder fraud charges to the rest of the family. Delilah's desperation was palpable as she grabbed Mom's arm. We'll make it right, Marlena. We'll pay everything back. Just give us time to figure out how... Time? I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen. It's 3:15 on Friday afternoon. The banks close in less than 2 hours, and my realtor expects an answer about the house offer by Monday morning. Mom was wringing her hands like she was trying to squeeze water from them. But Delilah doesn't have that kind of money. Even if we sold my car, liquidated everything, that's not my problem anymore. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the neighborhood where I'd grown up. You had months to figure this out. Instead, you planned to steal even more from me and then throw me away like garbage. The sound of Delilah's chair scraping against the floor made me turn around. She was pacing now, her face red and blotchy. This is insane, Marlena. You're talking about destroying your own family over money. I'm not destroying anything that wasn't already broken. My voice was steady, but inside I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. Tell me, Delilah, when exactly were you planning to cut me out? Before Christmas? After New Year's? Or were you going to wait until I'd paid for the roof and maybe a few more emergencies? The guilt that flashed across her face was answer enough. Mom tried a different approach, reaching for my hand with her trembling fingers. Sweetheart, I know we made mistakes, but we're family. Families forgive each other. I pulled my hand away gently but firmly. Family doesn't steal from each other, Mom. Family doesn't plot and scheme and laugh about it while the victim is cooking dinner in the next room. You were listening? Delilah's voice was barely a whisper. every word. I moved to the coffee table and pulled out one more document I hadn't shown them yet. Which brings me to the real gift I promised you 3 days ago. Their faces went white as they saw the letterhead. It was from the district attorney's office. This is a victim impact statement that I've already filed. It details not just the financial fraud, but the emotional manipulation, the systematic abuse of trust, and the premeditated nature of your scheme. Mom started hyperventilating. You can't be serious. You'd really send your own mother to jail? You sent yourself to jail the moment you decided to steal from me, I replied. But here's the thing about gifts. Sometimes they're not what the recipient expects them to be. I walked over to my purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. This contains copies of everything, all the evidence, all the documentation, and a detailed timeline of your fraud. There are 3 copies here. I held up the 3 envelopes like I was dealing the final hand in a poker game. 1 copy goes to Aunt Beverly tomorrow morning. You remember her, don't you? Dad's sister who organized the family reunion last summer? The one who keeps in touch with all our cousins. Delilah's face went ashen. Beverly was the family matriarch, the keeper of reputations, and the center of all family gossip. If she knew what they'd done, the entire extended family would hear about it within hours. The 2nd copy, I continued, goes to Pastor Williams at Mom's church. You know, the one where Mom serves on the finance committee and helps count the weekly offerings? Mom made a choking sound. I'm sure the congregation will be very interested to learn about the moral character of someone they trust with their donations. Please, Mom whispered, tears streaming down her face. You can't do this to us. I'm not doing anything to you that you didn't do to yourselves. I tapped the 3rd envelope against my palm. This last copy? This one's special. It goes to the nursing home where you told everyone I was trying to dump you, Mom. The same place where you've been telling the staff how ungrateful and selfish I am. I watched as the full scope of their social destruction dawned on them. In a small town like ours, reputation was everything. Mom's standing in the church, Delilah's few remaining friendships, their ability to show their faces at family gatherings. All of it would be gone by Sunday. But here's the beautiful part, I said, sitting back down and crossing my legs. I don't have to mail these envelopes. They're my insurance policy, as long as certain conditions are met. Delilah lunged forward desperately. What conditions? We'll do anything. First, every penny gets paid back. Not most of it, not some payment plan. All of it. The $28,000 you stole, plus the $41,000 in credit card debt you created. I pulled out a calculator and set it on the coffee table. That's $69,000. You have until the banks open Monday morning. That's impossible, Delilah screamed. We don't have that kind of money. Then you'd better get creative, hadn't you? I smiled coldly. Sell your car, liquidate your retirement account, borrow against Mom's house. I don't care how you do it. That's your problem now. Mom was hyperventilating again. And then what? You'll just forgive and forget? Oh, I'm not finished. I pulled out a pre-written document. Second condition. You both sign this confession admitting to the fraud. It gets notarized and filed with my lawyer. If you ever come after me again, financially or otherwise, it goes straight to the prosecutor. And third? Delilah's voice was barely audible. I stood up and looked around the living room one last time. At the furniture I'd helped Mom pick out, the walls I'd helped paint, the life I'd thought I was rebuilding. Third, I never want to see either of you again. The weekend that followed was the longest of my life. I stayed in my childhood bedroom, packing my belongings while listening to the frantic phone calls echoing through the house. Delilah was calling everyone she knew, old friends, distant relatives, anyone who might lend her money. Mom was on the phone with the bank, trying to understand home equity loans and reverse mortgages. Saturday morning, I found Delilah crying at the kitchen table, surrounded by financial documents. The bank won't approve a loan, she said without looking up. My credit is destroyed from the gambling debts. That's unfortunate, I replied, pouring myself coffee with steady hands. Marlena, please, can't we work out some kind of payment plan? I'll give you everything I have now and then— No! I sat down across from her, noting how different she looked. The confident manipulator from Thanksgiving dinner was gone, replaced by someone who looked desperate and small. You had your chance to be honest with me. Multiple chances, actually. Sunday evening, Mom knocked on my bedroom door. When I opened it, she was holding a cashier's check. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold it steady. $69,000, she whispered. We had to take out a second mortgage on the house. I looked at the check, made out to me, signed and official. And the confession? She handed me the notarized document, her signature shaky but legal. Delilah had signed it too, admitting to financial fraud and elder abuse. Reading their confessions in black and white should have felt triumphant, but instead, I just felt empty. There, Mom said, her voice broken. We did everything you asked. Now you'll destroy those envelopes, right? I took the check and the confession, holding the proof of their desperation in my hands. The envelopes stay with my lawyer. Insurance, remember? So this is it? Mom's eyes were red from crying. After everything we've been through as a family, you're really going to walk away forever? I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to find some trace of the mother I'd thought I was caring for. The woman who'd raised me, who'd taught me about family loyalty and love. But all I could see was someone who'd spent over a year systematically stealing from her own daughter while planning to discard her. Mom, you walked away from being my family the moment you decided to steal from me. I closed my bedroom door and turned the lock. Monday morning, I called my realtor in Phoenix. Accept the offer, I told her. I'm coming home. By noon, I was loading my car with everything I'd brought to rebuild my life here. As I carried the last box to my trunk, I saw Delilah watching me from the living room window. She looked like she wanted to say something, but I just got in my car and drove away. 6 months later, I was sitting on my back patio in Phoenix, watching the sunset paint the desert mountains in shades of gold and purple. Constance came over with 2 glasses of wine, settling into the chair beside me with a satisfied sigh. Any regrets? She asked, the question she'd been gently probing for months. I thought about it seriously, the way I had every day since leaving. About taking the money back? About exposing their lies? No. I sipped my wine, feeling the warm Arizona breeze on my face. But I do regret how long it took me to see who they really were. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, my private investigator. He'd been keeping an eye on things back home, partly for legal reasons, and partly because I'd asked him to. The message was brief. Delilah filed for bankruptcy last week. Your mother's house went into foreclosure. Thought you should know. I showed the message to Constance, who whistled low. That second mortgage caught up with them fast. Faster than I expected, I admitted. Part of me had wondered if they'd find a way to bounce back, to somehow make the financial mess work. But the truth was, they'd been living beyond their means for years, using my money as a safety net. Without it, their house of cards had collapsed completely. Do you feel bad about it? Constance asked gently. I considered the question while watching a hawk circle overhead. I feel sad, I said finally. Sad that it came to this. Sad that they chose greed over family. But bad? No. They made their choices, and those choices had consequences. My neighbor Warren waved from his yard next door, where he was tending his impressive vegetable garden. Since I'd moved back, he'd become something of a surrogate father figure, bringing me tomatoes and asking about my day. Real family, I'd learned, wasn't always about blood relations. I got another call from Aunt Beverly yesterday, I told Constance. She wanted to mediate between me and Mom, help us heal as a family. What did you tell her? The truth. That some wounds don't heal, and some relationships can't be repaired. That sometimes walking away is the healthiest choice you can make. I leaned back in my chair, feeling more at peace than I had in years. Beverly wasn't happy, but she understood once I explained everything. The funny thing was, I'd worried that cutting ties with Mom and Delilah would leave me feeling isolated and alone. Instead, I felt lighter than I had in decades. The constant anxiety about money, the walking on eggshells around family drama, the nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right, all of it was gone. You know what the best part is? I said to Constance as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. I don't have to pretend anymore. I don't have to make excuses for their behavior or convince myself that family comes first no matter what. The gift I gave them, I continued, watching the last traces of sunset fade into deep purple, wasn't just exposing their lies or taking back my money. The real gift was showing them exactly who they were. Some people spend their whole lives lying to themselves about their character. I forced them to confront the truth. Constance raised her glass. To truth, then, and to new beginnings. We clinked glasses, and I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the wine. You know what's funny? I spent so much time thinking I needed their approval, their love, their acceptance. But I already had everything I needed right here. Last week, I'd started volunteering at a local senior center, helping elderly residents manage their finances and avoid scams. It felt good to use my experience to protect people who were vulnerable the way I'd been. Several of the residents reminded me of the mother I'd thought I had. Kind, grateful, genuinely appreciative of help. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never overheard that conversation, I mused. How much more would they have taken? Would they really have cut me out completely? Does it matter? Constance asked. You heard what you needed to hear when you needed to hear it. She was right. The timing had been perfect, even if it felt devastating at the moment. If I'd discovered their plan any later, I might have lost even more. Any earlier, and I might not have had enough evidence to stop them. My phone rang, and I glanced at the caller ID. Unknown number with my old area code. For a split second, my heart jumped, thinking it might be Mom or Delilah trying to contact me. Then I remembered. They'd both lost their phones when the bills went unpaid. I let it go to voicemail. The hardest part, I said, settling back into my chair, was accepting that the family I wanted never actually existed. I was holding onto a fantasy, trying to force people to be something they weren't. The desert air was getting cool, and Constance wrapped her sweater tighter around her shoulders. But look what you built instead. Real friendships, a community that actually cares about you, peace of mind. That's worth more than all the money they stole. I nodded, thinking about Warren bringing me vegetables, about the book club I'd joined, about the comfortable routine I'd established. Simple pleasures that didn't come with manipulation or hidden agendas. I used to think cutting off family made me a bad person, I said. But sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for them, is to stop enabling their worst behaviors. As we headed inside, I felt grateful for the woman I'd become through this experience. Stronger, wiser, more discerning about who deserved my trust and generosity. The scared, desperate woman who'd moved back home to care for her mother was gone, replaced by someone who knew her own worth. Now tell me, what would you do if you were in my place? Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and comment where you're watching from.